Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on to another one of the videos on the channel. As you would have guessed by the title and what you're seeing on the screen by now, today's is a cold air intake install on my 2019 Kia Forte. This is a 2-liter engine, it's not the turbocharged version, and this will work on the 2019 Elantra and up, as well as 2020 Forte in Elantra also. As you can see, that's the website there. I'm going to link it in the description. It is quite a bit of a wait to get the actual intake itself, but it does come with some instructions, as you can see here. They come in the box also. Please do consider subscribing to the channel, and it does help us grow quite a bit. So we begin by undoing the little clips that hold, I guess, the factory intake tubes. They are easy to break. You just have to push in the middle with anything like pointy. I guess I used those Allen keys and I took them right out. And then you just pull out the tube that feeds the air into the intake box. It just pulls right out, super easy. And from there, we'll be unplugging the mass airflow sensor. It's a little clip that holds it on. Just push it out with your finger. It comes right out. Same with the crankcase venting hose. That one does have that little metallic kind of clip or hose clamp on it. You can remove it with your hand like I'm doing here, or if you have like a needle nose pliers or anything, that'll take it right out. So moving on, there are some clamps that'll actually hold the hose to the airbox. But before I do that, there is a clip that holds the actual airflow sensor wiring to that hose. So I undid that, and now I'm undoing the clamps that actually hold or actually feed the engine. Sorry. So they are kind of not your traditional looking clamps. I'll show you in just a moment. They're kind of more like built into the actual hose itself. So I undid the first one. Next is the actual crankcase venting tube. I just kind of loosened it up with a flat head screwdriver, and it came right out. So I just, of course, as you saw, my actual oil catch can is loose, just because I needed the space to work around there. So from here, I'm just pulling out the actual hose, and on both sides there, you can see the clamps that I undid. They are built in, so they don't come out. Of course, always make sure you keep all the parts that you're taking out just in case you need them in the future. So the actual airbox itself is held together with 3 bolts. They're all the same size, 10mm socket will do. And I just undid them here super quick. As you see, the one that I'm taking out right now, that's the one that I was originally using to anchor the oil catch can kind of mount that I fabricated. So of course I have to keep that in mind when I'm reinstalling the actual new intake. And I was kind of hoping and praying that it's all going to fit together right. Once those 3 bolts are done, the actual air box with the air filter inside pulls right out, and then we begin installing the new stuff in. So that's a little kind of like a spacer, rubber spacer that will go in the bottom right area where the original bolt was. I guess that's kind of to hold up the new heat vent that'll come with the cold air intake. I guess that's the best way they could have done it. So that goes in first. I just hand tightened it, of course, and we'll move on to the next step from there. So moving forward, I just wanted to make sure I installed or attached the actual, I guess this is called the hump coupler, to the actual intake area there. As you can see, I made sure I added the hose clamp on, and this easily pushes right in, and then I kind of position the hose clamp so I can get at it later when I tighten everything at the end. So now I'm just preparing the actual heat vent, or sorry, the heat shield that came with it. That'll at least do a little bit of work, venting or heating the, or keeping the heat, my apologies, away from the intake. It's not going to do, the most amazing job, as the intake itself is in the actual engine bay itself. It's not kind of underneath the engine near the tire, but it'll do a decent job. And of course there's a little bit of extra rubber material there, so I just cut it off. So the first step of installing the heat shield is adding the little bracket that'll actually screw into the bolt area where the cold air or where the catch can is. So this is just supplied, of course, all in the box. All the hardware is supplied also. The only thing that you do need to make sure you take off the original air box, as you can see here, is it's kind of like the housing where the airflow sensor will sit. So you have to make sure you remove that out of the old air box, and the little O-ring that you see here in just a second, that has to come off, just so that this sits flush with the assembly that comes with the cold air intake. So there's that piece that we just took off. We're going to be in just a second putting it into the heat shield here. It does fit perfectly, of course, just because this was designed for this car, so everything should fit right. Bolted that on with the provided hardware that came with the kit, and then we're adding the other side of the hump coupler to the actual, I guess, the little assembly for the mass airflow sensor. I sped that up for you guys there, just because I kind of struggled getting it on to begin with. And then once that's done, we're kind of in the final stretch here. I'm placing it in into the actual engine bay. There's two bolts that go in, one that goes in right where you see me putting in right now, and then the actual little spacer gets a washer and a nut, I guess, and then this is the last bolt that'll go in that's going to hold my oil catch can mount also. So I'm using the provided hardware that came with the kit. In terms of these bolts that I'm putting in here, I'm not putting in the original ones. It seemed like they were a little bit loose when I was attempting to put them in, so I guess that's probably why they provided these ones for us. All right, here, so I am preparing the other sides of the hump couplers just so I can add the actual, I guess, intake hose or whatever you want to call that little piece right there, that metal piece that I'm holding. As you can see, it also comes with the actual plug-in for the crankcase venting hose, so it's all going to fit just right. And of course, it turns out that it actually gives me a little bit more room for my oil catch can, which will make it easier for removing that in the future and emptying it. So that's great. I'm just making sure here that hose is all tight and the hump coupler is perfectly coupled in, and then I'm just going to go ahead and tighten up the hose clamps themselves that we had positioned earlier. The second one is the one that's further in here. It's a little bit harder to see from this angle, but it's just a flathead screwdriver that's needed, and that'll go ahead and tighten that up for you. So moving onward, now it's kind of working backwards, adding the venting hose there. And then I opted into using the pliers to actually put the actual clamp back in. Just wanted to make sure that it's all in there perfectly, and I kind of tightened it a little bit more than maybe I needed to, but I guess better safe than sorry in that department. And moving onwards, of course, just kind of getting the airflow sensor plug back in. It should fit just right as it was the original housing that it was in the original intake. And then kind of the best part of the entire process is adding in the actual filter itself. This one was provided by AEM also. It's not one that is required to be sprayed with that oil, I guess, that maybe some of the other intakes are needed to. This is one that you can just clean and then replace back in there, so there's no need to buy a new one every time that you do clean it or that you think it's dirty. Of course, it attaches on with another hose clamp, the same as we've been using throughout the entire process. Here are some shots, I guess, of the entire assembly itself and the engine bay in total, just how it looks with everything else. I think it's a great look, of course. I hope it sounds great. I'm going to turn on the engine in just a second, of course. I'll have that in the end of the video here for you so you can hear that also. All right, thank you so much for sticking around to the very end. I appreciate you watching the video. Please do consider subscribing and watching another one of the videos if you found it helpful and interesting. And as always, please do feel free to reach out in the comments. I'll be happy to help out and provide any insight that I have. Thank you so much.